My mother-in-law accused me of stealing her $15,000 diamond ring and dragged me to court, claiming I was a manipulative thief who couldn't be trusted around family heirlooms. She had witnesses, she had tears, and she had a story that painted me as the perfect villain. What she didn't know was that her own security system had been recording everything. For months, I endured whispered accusations at family gatherings, cold shoulders from relatives, and the humiliation of being treated like a criminal in my own home. She demanded I pay for the stolen ring, threatened to press charges, and even convinced my husband that maybe, just maybe, his wife wasn't who he thought she was. But when I walked into that courtroom and handed the judge a USB drive containing footage from her own ring camera, everything changed. The gasps that followed weren't from shock, they were from horror. Because what that camera captured wasn't me stealing anything. It was her, in her own bedroom, carefully hiding the ring she claimed I had taken, rehearsing her lies, and planning my destruction. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Sophia Bennett, and I'm 34 years old. For the past 12 years, I've worked as a senior cybersecurity analyst for TechGuard Solutions, one of the largest digital security firms on the West Coast. My job is to hunt down digital threats, analyze security breaches, and piece together evidence from data that most people would never think to examine. I've testified in federal court cases involving corporate espionage, helped law enforcement crack cybercriminal networks, and spent countless hours teaching clients how to protect themselves in an increasingly connected world. I've always believed that technology tells the truth, even when people don't. Digital footprints don't lie. Timestamps don't fabricate stories, and security cameras, they're the most honest witnesses you'll ever find. I've built my entire career on this principle, using technical expertise to uncover facts that others miss or choose to ignore. But nothing in my professional experience, not corporate data breaches, not international hacking rings, not even sophisticated identity theft schemes, prepared me for the day my own mother-in-law would try to destroy my life with a lie so calculated and cruel that it would tear my family apart, and drag me into a courtroom where everything I'd worked to build hung in the balance. My husband Ronan Montgomery and I had been married for 6 years when this nightmare began. We lived in a comfortable 2-story home in Millbrook Heights, a quiet suburb about 30 minutes outside of Portland. Ronan worked as a project manager for a construction company, and I worked remotely most days, managing security protocols for clients across the country. We had what I thought was a stable, happy marriage, despite the occasional tension with his family. Ronan's mother, Lovely Shaw, had never exactly warmed to me. From the moment we started dating 8 years ago, there was always something, a comment about my career taking me away from family obligations, observations about how I didn't understand their family traditions, subtle suggestions that maybe Ronan could have found someone more suitable. But I tolerated it because I loved my husband and family harmony mattered to him. Lovely was 67 years old, a retired real estate agent who had spent decades building what she called her legacy collection. Expensive jewelry, antiques, and heirlooms that she claimed would be passed down through generations. She lived alone in a sprawling colonial house in Westfield Gardens, about 20 minutes from our home, in the same house where she'd raised Ronan and his younger sister Amelia. The house was her pride and joy, filled with family photos, expensive furniture, and display cases showcasing her jewelry collection. Among her most prized possessions was a stunning 3-carat diamond ring that had belonged to her grandmother. She wore it to every family gathering, every holiday dinner, every special occasion. The ring was appraised at $15,000, and Lovely never let anyone forget its value or its sentimental importance. She would often hold court at family dinners, showing off the ring to guests, telling the story of how her grandmother had saved for 2 years to buy it during the Great Depression. What I didn't know was that Lovely had been planning something for months, something that would turn my technical expertise, from a career asset, into the very tool I'd need to save my reputation, my marriage, and my future. The first sign that something was wrong came on a Tuesday evening in late October. Ronan came home from work looking troubled, his usual cheerful demeanor replaced by something I couldn't quite read. He barely touched his dinner, kept checking his phone, and avoided eye contact when I asked about his day. "We need to talk," he finally said, pushing his plate away. My stomach dropped. In 6 years of marriage, those 4 words had never preceded good news. I set down my fork and gave him my full attention. "Mom called me at work today," he began slowly. "She's upset, really upset." "About what?" He took a deep breath. "Her grandmother's ring is missing. The diamond one. She can't find it anywhere." I felt confusion rather than concern. "Okay, That's unfortunate. Did she retrace her steps, check all the usual places? Sometimes people put valuable items in unusual spots for safekeeping and forget. Ronan's expression darkened. She thinks. She has reason to believe that someone took it. The way he said someone made my blood chill. Someone like who? He looked directly at me for the first time since he'd sat down. Sophia, she thinks you took it. The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually laughed, not from amusement, but from sheer disbelief. She thinks I what? Ronan, that's insane. Why would I steal her ring? I have my own jewelry. I have my own money. This doesn't make any sense. She said the last time she remembers seeing it was at Sunday dinner 2 weeks ago. You were the last person in her bedroom that night, remember? When you went upstairs to get her reading glasses. I did remember. Lovely had asked me to retrieve her glasses from her nightstand while she was hosting dessert in the dining room. I'd gone upstairs, found the glasses on her dresser, and returned within 2 minutes. It was such a minor forgettable interaction that I hadn't given it a second thought. Ronan, you can't be serious. I grabbed her glasses and came right back downstairs. You were there. You saw how quickly I returned. I know, but, he trailed off, running his hands through his hair. She's really convinced Sophia. She's talked to Amelia, she's talked to my Aunt Patricia, she's told them all that she thinks you took it. The humiliation was immediate and overwhelming. The idea that my husband's family was sitting around discussing my alleged theft, analyzing my character, questioning my integrity, it was devastating. But more than that, it was bewildering. I genuinely couldn't understand why Lovely would make such an accusation. What exactly did she tell them? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. She said she noticed it was missing on Monday morning. She searched everywhere, retraced her steps from the weekend, and the only variable was you being in her room. She said she didn't want to accuse anyone, but she couldn't think of any other explanation. And what do you think? The question hung between us like a challenge. Ronan was quiet for a long moment. I don't think you took her ring, Sophia, but I also don't understand why she would make this up. She's not a vindictive person, she's genuinely distressed. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying every interaction from that Sunday dinner, every moment I'd spent in Lovely's house, trying to understand how this situation had developed. I thought about my career, my reputation, my relationship with technology, and truth-seeking. As a cybersecurity analyst, I was trained to approach problems systematically, to follow evidence rather than assumptions, to question narratives that didn't align with facts. And something about this narrative didn't align with facts. The timeline felt off. The accusation felt disproportionate. And most importantly, Lovely's certainty felt premature. In my professional experience, when someone was that quickly convinced of a specific suspect without investigating other possibilities, it usually meant they either had information they weren't sharing, or they were constructing a narrative rather than discovering one. But I also knew that family dynamics were different from corporate security breaches. Emotions clouded judgment, relationships complicated evidence, and sometimes, people genuinely believed things that weren't true, especially when they were upset or confused. What I didn't know was that while I was lying awake questioning everything, Lovely was 3 steps ahead, already planning her next move. She wasn't confused or upset, she was calculating, and she had severely underestimated the woman she was trying to frame. The phone call came the next morning, while I was reviewing security protocols for a new client. Ronan had already left for work, and I was enjoying the quiet concentration of my home office when my phone rang. Lovely's name appeared on the screen. I hesitated before answering. Part of me wanted to let it go to voicemail, to avoid what I knew would be an uncomfortable conversation. But I also knew that avoiding her would only make things worse, and I genuinely wanted to help resolve the situation. "Hello, Lovely," I said, keeping my voice neutral and professional. "Sophia," her tone was cold, clipped. "I think we need to talk." "Of course. I understand you're missing your grandmother's ring. I'm so sorry, I know how much it means to you. Is there anything I can do to help you look for it?" There was a pause, and when she spoke again, her voice had a hardness I'd never heard before. "You can start by telling me where it is." The directness of the accusation caught me off guard. "Lovely, I don't know where your ring is. I don't understand why you think I would know." Her voice was sharp. "Don't insult my intelligence, Sophia. You were the only person in my bedroom that night. You had access, you had opportunity, and frankly, I've never fully trusted your motives in this family." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The last statement felt like a slap. "My motives, what does that mean?" "It means I've watched you for 6 years, and I've seen how you operate. You're calculating, you're opportunistic. You married my son for security, and now you're taking whatever else you can get. I was stunned into silence. This wasn't just about a missing ring, this was character assassination. This was years of resentment and suspicion coming to the surface, using the ring as justification for attacking everything about me. Lovely, I love Ronan. I've never taken anything from your family, and I'm genuinely hurt that you would think I'm capable of theft. Then prove it, she said. Return my ring, apologize for the deception, and maybe we can move past this. I can't return something I don't have. Then I guess we have a problem. She hung up without saying goodbye, leaving me staring at my phone in disbelief. This conversation had escalated far beyond a simple misunderstanding. Lovely wasn't just suspicious, she was convinced. And worse, she was demanding that I prove my innocence rather than investigating other possibilities. Over the next few days, the situation deteriorated rapidly. Ronan came home with updates that made my stomach sink further each time. Lovely had called his sister Amelia, who lived 2 hours away in Greendale Township, and convinced her that I was a thief. She'd spoken to her sister Patricia, who lived in the same neighborhood, and painted me as a manipulative outsider who had fooled everyone. By Thursday, the family group chat that I'd been part of for years had gone silent whenever I contributed. When I sent a message asking about weekend plans, no one responded. When I shared a funny article, it was ignored. The digital version of being frozen out was somehow more painful than if they had confronted me directly. Friday brought the worst news yet. Ronan came home looking defeated. She's filed a police report, he said. Without preamble, I felt the air leave my lungs. She what? A theft report. She told them she has reason to believe a family member stole her ring. She didn't name you specifically in the report, but she told me she's prepared to if the ring doesn't turn up by Monday. Ronan, this is insane. This has gone way too far. A police report over a ring that she probably just misplaced. She's convinced someone took it, Sophia. And from her perspective, you're the only logical suspect. From her perspective, maybe. But what about from your perspective? Do you think I stole your mother's ring? He was quiet for too long. When he finally answered, his voice was strained. I don't want to think you did. But I also can't understand why she would make this up. And honestly, Sophia, your reaction has been strange. Strange how?
You don't seem upset enough.
If someone accused me of theft, I'd be furious. I'd be demanding we tear the house apart looking for the ring. I'd be calling everyone we know to help search. But you're just calm, analytical, like you're treating this as an intellectual puzzle instead of a crisis that could destroy our family. His words hit me like a physical blow because they contained a grain of truth. I had been approaching this analytically, rather than emotionally. But that was how I approached every crisis, with systematic thinking rather than panic. It was what made me good at my job, but apparently, it made me look suspicious to my own husband. That's who I am, Ronan. That's how I solve problems. But my calm doesn't mean I'm guilty. It means I'm trying to think clearly so we can figure out what actually happened. But what if what actually happened is that you took the ring? The question hung in the air between us, and I realized that our marriage had reached a crossroads. Either Ronan trusted me completely, or he didn't trust me at all. There was no middle ground when it came to theft. If you think I'm capable of stealing from your mother, then we have bigger problems than a missing ring, I said quietly. That weekend was the longest of my life. Ronan was distant, conflicted between loyalty to his wife and loyalty to his mother. I was isolated, cut off from his family, and feeling increasingly desperate. But I was also angry at the injustice, angry at the assumptions, and angry at being forced to defend myself against accusations I couldn't disprove. Sunday dinner at Lovely's house was cancelled for the first time in 6 years. The official reason was that she was too upset to host, but I knew the real reason was that she couldn't bear to have a suspected thief at her table. Monday morning brought a text from Lovely. Last chance to do the right thing. Ring or police. I showed the text to Ronan, who read it with a grim expression. She's serious, he said. Good, I replied. Let her call the police. Let her make this official. Because maybe then we can get some actual investigation instead of just accusations and ultimatums. But as I said the words, I felt a chill of fear. I was innocent, but I also knew that innocent people sometimes got caught up in situations they couldn't control. And I was beginning to realize that Lovely wasn't just a grieving woman who had lost a precious heirloom. She was someone with a plan, someone who had thought this through more carefully than I had initially understood. What I didn't know was that while I was preparing for the possibility of a police investigation, Lovely was preparing for something much bigger. She wasn't just planning to accuse me of theft, she was planning to destroy me completely. And she had tools at her disposal that I hadn't even considered yet. The war for my reputation, my marriage, and my future was just beginning. And my opponent had a significant head start. The police call came on Tuesday morning. Officer Janet Reynolds from the Millbrook Heights Police Department asked if I could come in for a voluntary interview regarding a theft report. Her tone was professional, but not accusatory. She made it clear that I wasn't under arrest, and could bring an attorney if I wanted. I decided to go alone. As a cybersecurity professional, I was comfortable with investigations, and I believed that my innocence would be apparent once I explained the situation clearly. Besides, hiring a lawyer would make me look guilty to Ronan's family, and I was still hoping we could resolve this without permanently damaging relationships. The police station was a modern building with industrial carpeting and fluorescent lighting that made everything look slightly unreal. Officer Reynolds was in her early 40s with graying hair and tired eyes that suggested she'd seen plenty of family disputes that masqueraded as criminal cases. "Mrs. Bennett," she began, "I want to be clear that this is just an information-gathering conversation. Mrs. Shaw filed a report about a missing ring, and she's indicated that she believes someone in her family may have taken it. Your name came up as someone who had recent access to her home." "I understand," I said. "I'm happy to help however I can. Can you tell me about your visit to Mrs. Shaw's house on October 13th? I walked her through the evening systematically. Sunday dinner had started at 5 p.m. There were 6 people present: lovely Ronan, myself, Amelia and her husband Xander Stone, and lovely sister Patricia Hayes. We'd had pot roast, mashed potatoes, and green beans. During dessert, around 7:30 p.m., Lovely had asked me to retrieve her reading glasses from her bedroom so she could look at photos that Patricia had brought. "How long were you upstairs?" Officer Reynolds asked. "Less than 5 minutes. Maybe 2 or 3. I went straight to her bedroom, found the glasses on the dresser, and came back down. Everyone was still at the table when I returned." "Did you notice the ring when you were in the bedroom?" This was the question I'd been dreading, because the honest answer was problematic. I don't specifically remember seeing it, but I wasn't looking for it either. I was focused on finding the glasses. Officer Reynolds made a note. "Mrs. Shaw says she always keeps the ring in a specific jewelry box on her dresser. She's certain it was there that evening, because she wore it to dinner. Then it should have been there when I was looking for the glasses. The fact that I don't remember seeing it doesn't mean it wasn't there, it just means I wasn't paying attention to her jewelry." "Have you ever admired the ring? Asked about it, shown particular interest in it?" "She's shown it to everyone many times over the years. It's beautiful, and obviously very meaningful to her. But I've never asked to handle it or expressed any desire to own it. I have my own jewelry." Officer Reynolds asked about my financial situation, my relationship with Lovely, and whether I'd ever taken anything from her house before. I answered everything honestly, explaining that while Lovely and I weren't particularly close, I'd never had reason to think she disliked me enough to make false accusations. After about 45 minutes, Officer Reynolds closed her notebook. "Mrs. Bennett, I have to ask, do you have any idea where the ring might be? I wish I did. I'd love to help find it and put this whole situation to rest." "Have you asked Mrs. Shaw about other possibilities? Whether she might have moved it for safekeeping, or whether anyone else had access to her house?" "She's adamant that she never moves the ring from its usual spot, and she says you're the only person who's been in her bedroom recently." That statement bothered me, though I couldn't immediately articulate why. As I drove home from the police station, I kept thinking about Officer Reynolds' words. "She says you're the only person who's been in her bedroom recently." That evening, I sat down with my laptop and did what I always did when facing a complex problem. I created a timeline. Years of cybersecurity work had taught me that timelines reveal patterns, inconsistencies, and gaps that emotional conversations often miss. October 13th, Sunday dinner. I retrieved glasses from Lovely's bedroom around 7:30 p.m. October 14th, Monday. Lovely discovers ring is missing, according to her story. October 15th, Tuesday. Lovely calls Ronan at work to report the ring missing and accuse me. October 16th, Wednesday. Lovely calls me directly to demand I return the ring. October 17th, 19th, Thursday through Saturday. Lovely tells family members I'm a thief. October 20th, Sunday. Family dinner cancelled. October 21st, Monday. Lovely texts ultimatum, ring or police. October 22nd, Tuesday. Police interview. Looking at the timeline visually, something struck me as odd. If Lovely discovered the ring was missing on Monday morning, why did she wait until Tuesday evening to call Ronan? In my experience, when people discovered that something precious was missing, they searched immediately and contacted family right away. A day and a half delay seemed unusual. I decided to call Amelia directly. Despite the family tension, she'd always been friendlier to me than Lovely, and I hoped she might be willing to have an honest conversation. "Sophia," she said when she answered, her voice cautious. "I wasn't sure I'd hear from you." "Amelia, I know this situation is awkward, but I'm hoping you can help me understand something. When exactly did your mother call you about the ring?" "Tuesday evening, around 6 o'clock. She was really upset." "Did she say when she discovered it was missing?" "She said she noticed it Monday morning, when she was getting dressed, but she spent the whole day searching before she called anyone." That aligned with what Lovely had told others, but it still felt off to me. Did she say anything else? About where she'd looked, or whether she had any other theories about what happened? Amelia was quiet for a moment. "Sophia, can I ask you something directly?"
Of course.
"Did you take Mom's ring?" The question was asked without hostility, more like someone seeking clarification than making an accusation. "No, Amelia, I absolutely did not take your mother's ring. I'm as confused about this whole situation as anyone." "I believe you," she said, surprising me. "I've been thinking about it, and it just doesn't make sense. You have a good job, you're not hurting for money, and you've never shown any interest in Mom's jewelry beyond normal politeness." "Thank you for saying that, it means more than you know. But Sophia, I also don't understand why Mom would make this up. She's genuinely convinced you took it, and she's not usually paranoid or vindictive." After I hung up with Amelia, I sat staring at my timeline, trying to identify what was bothering me about the sequence of events. Then it hit me, the certainty. Lovely hadn't just suspected me, she'd been immediately convinced that I was guilty. That level of certainty, that quickly, suggested either overwhelming evidence or predetermined conclusion. In cybersecurity investigations, we had a saying: when someone is 100% certain without 100% evidence, check for constructed narratives. People who were genuinely trying to solve a mystery remained open to multiple possibilities until evidence pointed them in a specific direction. People who constructed narratives to serve a purpose started with their conclusion and worked backward. I opened a new document and began listing everything I knew about Lovely's behavior. She waited a day and a half to report the ring missing. She immediately focused on me as the only suspect. She demanded that I prove my innocence, rather than investigating other possibilities. She escalated to police involvement within a week. She refused to consider that the ring might simply be misplaced. None of these behaviors aligned with someone who was genuinely confused or upset about a missing item. They aligned with someone who was executing a plan. But what could her motive possibly be? I'd never done anything to seriously offend her. Our relationship was polite but distant, exactly what you'd expect between a strong-willed mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law, who didn't share much in common. Unless this wasn't really about me at all. Unless this was about Ronan. I thought back over the past few months, looking for patterns I might have missed. Lovely had been increasingly critical of our marriage lately. Comments about us not having grandkids yet. Observations about how my career took me away from family obligations. Suggestions that maybe Ronan would be happier with someone more traditional. What if the ring wasn't missing at all? What if this was an elaborate attempt to drive a wedge between Ronan and me? What if Lovely was betting that accusations of theft would either break up our marriage, or force me to admit to something I didn't do, proving that I was the kind of person she'd always suspected I was? The thought seemed too calculated, too cruel to be believable. But then I remembered something that chilled me. Lovely had been a real estate agent for 30 years. She was accustomed to reading people, manipulating situations, and getting what she wanted through strategic pressure. I needed evidence, and fortunately I was very good at finding evidence. Wednesday morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 2 years. I needed a clear head and uninterrupted time to approach this situation the way I would approach any cybersecurity investigation. Systematically, thoroughly, and without emotional bias. I started by researching Lovely Shaw's digital footprint. As a cybersecurity analyst, I had access to various investigative tools and databases that most people didn't know existed. While I couldn't legally hack into her personal accounts, I could examine publicly available information, social media activity, and digital patterns that might reveal relevant information. Lovely wasn't particularly active on social media, but she maintained a Facebook account where she occasionally posted photos of family gatherings and shared articles about local news. I scrolled through her recent activity, looking for anything that seemed unusual or out of character. What I found was interesting. Her posting pattern had changed dramatically in the past 3 months. From January through July, she posted regularly photos of her garden, updates about family visits, shares of local business promotions. But starting in August, her posts became less frequent and more focused on specific themes. Articles about trust in families, posts about protecting valuable heirlooms, and several shared stories about theft and betrayal. One post from September 15th particularly caught my attention. She'd shared an article titled, "How to Protect Your Family from Internal Theft," with the comment, "You never know who you can really trust. Sometimes the people closest to you are the ones you should watch most carefully." This was posted nearly a month before the ring allegedly went missing, which meant she'd been thinking about family theft long before there was any reason to suspect it had occurred. I screenshot the post and added it to a folder I'd created called Evidence Collection. Then I continued digging. Lovely's Instagram account was even more revealing. She posted photos regularly, often featuring her jewelry collection. I found dozens of photos of her wearing the grandmother's ring over the past year, always with detailed captions about its history and value. But I noticed something odd. The last photo of her wearing the ring was posted on September 8th, over a month before our Sunday dinner. For someone who wore that ring to every special occasion and posted about it frequently, a month-long gap was unusual. Had she stopped wearing it for some reason? Had she moved it to a different location for safekeeping? Or had she been planning this accusation for longer than anyone realized? I cross-referenced the dates with my own calendar and social media. Ronan and I had attended several family gatherings in September and early October. But now that I thought about it, I couldn't remember seeing Lovely wear the ring to any of them. At the time, I hadn't paid attention. People change their jewelry choices for various reasons. But in the context of current events, the pattern seemed significant. Next, I examined the digital security around Lovely's house. During my years of marriage to Ronan, I'd visited hundreds of times, and I knew she had a comprehensive security system. Like many people her age who lived alone, she'd invested heavily in home security. Motion sensors, door alarms, and multiple cameras. Most importantly, she had Ring cameras. 2 of them, one covering the front door and driveway, and another covering the backyard and patio entrance. I'd seen her check the footage on her phone during previous visits, usually to see when packages had been delivered, or to identify who had been walking through the neighborhood. Ring cameras store footage in the cloud for up to 180 days with a subscription plan, and they timestamp everything. If someone had actually entered her house and stolen the ring, there would be digital evidence. But more importantly, if no one had entered her house, that would also be evidence. The problem was gaining access to that footage. Lovely certainly wasn't going to share it with me voluntarily, and the police would need a warrant to obtain it without her cooperation. But there might be another way. I remembered that Ronan had helped his mother set up her Ring system 2 years ago, and he'd mentioned having access to the account in case she needed technical support. Many families shared access to home security systems for practical reasons: if someone was traveling, if there were emergencies, or if the primary user needed help managing the technology. That evening, when Ronan came home from work, I decided to approach the subject carefully. "How is your mom handling all this stress?" I asked. "She must be exhausted from worrying about the ring." "She is. She's barely sleeping, according to Amelia. She keeps checking her security cameras, thinking maybe she'll spot something she missed before." "That's smart. The Ring cameras would show if anyone had broken in, right?" "Yeah, definitely. The front camera catches everyone who comes to the door, and the back camera covers the patio. She's got pretty good coverage of the whole property." "Has she checked the footage from Sunday night? Maybe it would show something that could help figure out what happened." Ronan looked at me with a strange expression. "She did check. She said there was nothing unusual. Nothing at all. No delivery drivers, no neighbors, no one coming or going after we left. Just family members arriving and leaving at normal times." This answer bothered me for several reasons. First, if the Ring cameras had captured footage of everyone's arrival and departure, then there was a complete digital record of who had access to the house that evening. Second, if there was nothing unusual, that strongly suggested the ring hadn't been stolen by an outside party, which meant it was either misplaced or someone from the family had taken it. But most importantly, Ronan's phrasing suggested that he'd seen the footage himself, or at least heard a detailed description of it from Lovely. "Did she show you the footage?" I asked. "Just briefly. She wanted me to confirm the times when we arrived and left." "And what times did the cameras show?" "We got there around 4:45, just like we always do. We left around 9:15, pretty standard." I made mental notes of these details, but something still felt incomplete. Did she check footage from other days? Maybe someone had been casing the house, or maybe she'd had workers or deliveries that she forgot about. I think she checked everything from the past couple weeks. She was pretty thorough. That night, after Ronan fell asleep, I lay in bed thinking about the Ring camera footage. If Lovely had been as thorough as she claimed, then she had a complete digital record of everyone who had approached her house in the weeks leading up to the Ring's disappearance. That footage would either exonerate me completely, or provide evidence of who else might have had access. But it would also show something else, whether Lovely herself had left the house during the relevant time period. If the Ring had been moved or hidden somewhere outside the house, or if she'd taken it to a bank or safety deposit box, the cameras would have recorded her departure and return. I realized I needed to see that footage myself. Not to break any laws or violate anyone's privacy, but to examine evidence that was directly relevant to accusations being made against me. If the footage supported Lovely's timeline and accusations, I would accept that and cooperate fully with the investigation. But if the footage contradicted her story, or revealed information she hadn't shared, then everyone deserved to know the truth. The question was how to gain access without creating more family drama or legal complications. I needed a strategy that was ethical, legal, and effective. And then I remembered something that changed everything. The memory hit me Thursday morning while I was brushing my teeth. Ronan's phone. He'd mentioned having access to his mother's Ring account for technical support, and he regularly received notifications when her cameras detected motion. I'd seen the alerts pop up on his phone during previous visits, little notifications that someone was at the front door or movement had been detected in the backyard. More importantly, I remembered that Ronan sometimes shared interesting footage with me. When delivery drivers did something amusing, or when neighborhood cats triggered the motion sensors, he'd show me clips from his mother's cameras. It was innocent family sharing, the kind of thing that happened in many households with shared security systems. If I could convince Ronan to review the footage with me, not to spy on his mother, but to help solve the mystery of the missing ring, we might discover evidence that everyone had overlooked. The key was framing it correctly. I couldn't approach this as an investigation of Lovely's truthfulness. I had to approach it as a collaborative effort to find the ring and clear my name. That evening, I waited until Ronan was relaxed, settled on the couch with a beer and his phone nearby. "I've been thinking about your mom's ring," I said carefully. "I know she checked her security footage, but maybe we could look at it together. Fresh eyes might spot something she missed." Ronan looked up from his phone. "What kind of thing?" "I don't know. Maybe someone approached the house that she didn't recognize. Maybe there was activity at unusual times. Maybe the timestamps could help us figure out exactly when the ring went missing so we know what time frame to focus on." She was pretty thorough, Sophia. I'm sure she was, but she was also upset and stressed. When you're emotionally involved in a situation, it's easy to miss details. That's why police departments have multiple investigators review evidence. Different perspectives catch different things. Ronan considered this. I could see him weighing his loyalty to his mother against his desire to resolve the situation fairly. "What would we be looking for specifically?" he asked. "Anything that doesn't fit the normal pattern. Your mom is very routine-oriented, right? She keeps regular schedules, she's careful about security, she notices when things are out of place. So if something unusual happened around the time the ring went missing, the cameras might have captured it. And you think that might help prove you didn't take it?" "I think it might help prove what actually happened, whoever's responsible." After a long pause, Ronan picked up his phone. "Okay, let's take a look." The Ring app interface was clean and user-friendly, with a timeline showing motion events for each camera. Ronan scrolled to October 13th, the Sunday of our family dinner, and began reviewing the footage. The front door camera showed exactly what we expected, family members arriving throughout the late afternoon. Amelia and Xander at 4:30, Ronan and me at 4:45, Patricia at 5:15. Everyone's arrival was time-stamped and clearly visible. "See?" Ronan said. "Nothing unusual, but I was studying the timeline more carefully. Can you scroll back a few hours? Show me the whole day." He navigated to earlier footage, starting from Sunday morning. The camera had captured Lovely leaving for church at 9:30 a.m., returning at 11:15 a.m., and then no activity until family members began arriving for dinner. "What about Saturday?" I asked. Ronan scrolled backward. Saturday showed a quiet day, with minimal activity, a delivery driver at 2 p.m., Lovely leaving for errands at 10 a.m., and returning at noon, normal neighborhood foot traffic. Friday was similar routine comings and goings, nothing that seemed relevant to a missing ring. But then something caught my attention. Wait, go back to Saturday afternoon. After the delivery, Ronan found the timestamp 2:17 p.m., a package delivery from Amazon. The driver approached the front door, left a box, and departed within 2 minutes. Standard delivery process. Now check the back camera for the same time period, I said. Ronan switched to the backyard camera and navigated to 2:17 p.m. The footage showed the backyard and patio area, which appeared empty during the delivery time. But as we watched, something unexpected appeared in the frame. At 2:22 p.m., just 5 minutes after the delivery driver left, Lovely emerged from the back door, carrying a small box and a garden trowel. She walked to the far corner of her yard, near a large oak tree, and appeared to be digging in the flower bed. "That's weird," Ronan said. "Why would she be gardening with a box?" We watched as Lovely spent about 10 minutes in the garden area, occasionally bending down as if placing something in the ground or covering it with soil. Then she gathered her tools and returned to the house, still carrying what appeared to be the same small box. "Can you zoom in on the box?" I asked. Ronan tried, but the resolution wasn't high enough to make out details from that distance. However, the size and shape were consistent with a jewelry box. Exactly the kind of container someone might use to transport valuable items. "Maybe she was just planting bulbs or something," Ronan said, but his voice lacked conviction. "In October. And why would she need a box for planting bulbs?" We continued reviewing the footage. Sunday morning showed Lovely's typical church routine, but Sunday afternoon revealed something that made my heart race. At 1:30 p.m., 3 hours before family dinner was scheduled to begin, Lovely again exited through her back door. This time she was carrying a different box, slightly larger, and she spent nearly 20 minutes in the same corner of the yard. The footage showed her digging, placing something in the ground, and then carefully covering it with soil and fallen leaves. "Oh my God," I whispered. "What?" Ronan was staring at the screen, but I could see from his expression that he understood what we were watching. "She buried something, Ronan. On Sunday afternoon, hours before we arrived for dinner, she buried something in her backyard." We sat in stunned silence, watching his mother methodically conceal whatever she had placed in the ground. The timestamp showed 1:47 p.m., when she finished and returned to the house. "This doesn't make sense," Ronan said. "Why would she bury something right before family dinner?" But I was already understanding the terrible logic of what we'd discovered, because she was setting up the timeline. She needed the ring to be missing after Sunday dinner, so she hid it beforehand. Then she could claim it disappeared sometime after our visit, when I had access to her bedroom. Ronan was shaking his head, unwilling to accept what the evidence clearly showed. "There has to be another explanation. Maybe she was hiding money, or important documents, or no." Ronan, look at the timeline. Saturday afternoon, she buries something small. Sunday afternoon, she buries something else, just hours before accusing me of theft. Monday morning, she discovers the ring is missing. This isn't coincidence. As the implications sank in, Ronan's face went pale. We weren't just looking at evidence of where the ring might be hidden. We were looking at evidence of premeditation. Lovely hadn't just accused me of theft. She had orchestrated the entire situation, planning the timeline, establishing the opportunity, and creating false evidence to support her accusations. "We need to keep watching," I said grimly. "If she buried the ring on Sunday afternoon, and she's been lying about when it went missing, then we need to see what else she's been doing." The next hour of footage review revealed the full scope of Lovely's deception, and it was worse than I had imagined. We spent the rest of Thursday night reviewing every piece of ring camera footage from the week surrounding the alleged theft. What we discovered was a methodical pattern of deception that revealed the true scope of Lovely's manipulation. Monday, October 14th, the day she claimed to have discovered the ring missing, showed her leaving the house at 8:30 a.m. and returning at 10:15 a.m. But instead of going directly inside, she spent another 20 minutes in the backyard, in the same corner where she'd buried items on Saturday and Sunday. The camera captured her digging again, but this time she appeared to be retrieving something rather than burying it. Tuesday, October 15th, the day she first called Ronan to accuse me, showed even more damning evidence. At 6:45 a.m., more than 12 hours before she contacted Ronan, Lovely was back in the garden area. This time she spent nearly an hour working in that corner of the yard, occasionally glancing toward the house, as if ensuring she wasn't being observed from inside. Most chilling of all was footage from Wednesday, October 16th, the day she called me directly to demand I return the ring. The cameras captured her leaving the house at 9 a.m., carrying a small shovel, and what appeared to be the same jewelry box we'd seen in earlier footage. She spent 45 minutes in the garden area, and when she returned to the house, she was no longer carrying the box. "She reburied it," Ronan said, his voice hollow with disbelief. "After she accused you, after she called the police, she went back and moved the evidence again." I was taking screenshots of key timestamps, building a digital case file that clearly documented the pattern. She's been managing this whole situation, Ronan. Every accusation, every timeline, every detail, it's all been carefully orchestrated. But the most devastating evidence came from footage we almost missed. While reviewing Monday's timeline more carefully, I noticed a brief motion alert from the front door camera at 11:30 p.m., nearly 14 hours after Lovely had supposedly spent all day searching for her missing ring. The footage showed Lovely opening her front door and speaking to someone on the porch, though the camera angle didn't capture the visitor clearly. The conversation lasted about 3 minutes, and then Lovely closed the door. At first it seemed insignificant, perhaps a neighbor checking on her, or someone delivering a late package. But when I checked the backyard camera for the same timestamp, I discovered something that made my blood run cold. At 11:35 p.m., 5 minutes after the front door conversation, Lovely exited through her back door, carrying a flashlight, and headed straight to the corner of the yard where she'd been digging. She spent nearly an hour in the dark, working by flashlight, occasionally returning to the house, and then going back outside. She had help, I realized. Someone came to the house Monday night, and afterward she spent an hour in the backyard. Someone else knows about this. Ronan was staring at the timestamp display, his face pale in the laptop's glow. This is insane, Sophia. This is completely insane. My mother has been lying to everyone, to me, to Amelia, to the police. She's been planning this for days, maybe weeks. The question is why, I said, though I was beginning to understand the answer. And who helped her Monday night? Friday morning brought a text from Lovely that seemed almost surreal given what we now knew. Sophia, I've been praying about this situation, and I'm willing to give you one more chance to do the right thing. Return my ring by Sunday, and we can handle this as a family. Otherwise, I'm pressing formal charges Monday morning. I showed the message to Ronan, who read it with a mixture of anger and disbelief. She's still doing it, he said. Even now she's still trying to manipulate the situation. Because she doesn't know that we know, I replied. She thinks her plan is working perfectly. That afternoon, I made a decision that I knew would change everything. We need to confront her directly, show her the footage, give her a chance to explain herself, and see if she'll admit what she's done. Ronan looked terrified at the prospect. Sophia, if we're wrong about this, we're not wrong. The evidence is overwhelming, but she deserves a chance to come clean, before this goes any further. And honestly, I need to hear her try to explain this. We decided to visit her Saturday evening, when we could have privacy, and enough time for a complete conversation. I prepared printed screenshots of key timestamps, organized chronologically to tell the story clearly. I also created a backup of all the Ring camera footage on a secure drive, just in case the original files were somehow altered or deleted. Saturday evening, we drove to Lovely's house in Westfield Gardens in complete silence. The tree-lined streets looked peaceful and normal, giving no hint of the drama that was about to unfold. As we pulled into her driveway, I noticed that the corner of her backyard, the area we'd seen her digging in repeatedly, looked recently disturbed, with fresh mulch covering what had once been a flower bed. Lovely answered the door wearing a floral dress and a carefully composed expression that didn't quite hide the tension around her eyes. Ronan, Sophia, this is unexpected. Hi Mom, Ronan said, his voice strained. We need to talk to you about something important. She led us to her living room, the same space where we'd shared countless family dinners and holiday celebrations. The familiar surroundings made the confrontation feel even more surreal. Lovely settled into her favorite armchair, the one positioned to have a clear view of anyone entering the room, while Ronan and I sat together on the couch. I assume this is about the ring situation, Lovely said, folding her hands in her lap. I hope you've come to resolve this matter appropriately. I pulled out my folder of printed screenshots. Actually, we're here because we've discovered some information that changes everything. Lovely's expression didn't change, but I noticed her hands tighten slightly. What kind of information? We've been reviewing your Ring camera footage, Ronan said. The footage from the days around when the ring went missing. For just a moment, something flickered across Lovely's face, surprise perhaps, or calculation, but she recovered quickly. I already reviewed that footage thoroughly. There was nothing unusual. That's not what we found, I said, opening the folder and laying out the first screenshot. This is from Saturday, October 12th, at 2:22 p.m. You're carrying a small box into your backyard, and spending time in the corner garden area. Lovely glanced at the image dismissively. I do gardening work regularly. There's nothing unusual about that. What about this? I placed the Sunday screenshot on the coffee table. Sunday, October 13th, at 1:47 p.m. 3 hours before our family dinner. You're again in the backyard, this time burying something larger. Lovely's composure was beginning to crack, but she maintained her story. I was preparing the garden for winter, planting bulbs, storing garden tools. I don't understand why you're making this seem suspicious. Ronan leaned forward. Mom, what were you planting? In October, in the same spot where you'd already worked the day before. I don't appreciate being interrogated in my own home, Lovely said, her voice sharp. Especially not by someone who's trying to deflect attention from her own wrongdoing. I placed the Monday screenshot on the table. This is Monday morning, October 14th, the day you claim you discovered the ring was missing. But instead of searching inside your house, you spent 45 minutes digging in your backyard. Lovely stood up abruptly. I don't know what you think you're proving with these pictures, but this is harassment. I've been nothing but patient with this situation, and now you're trying to turn the tables by accusing me of what, burying my own ring? That's exactly what we're saying, Ronan said quietly. Mom, we have footage of you burying items in your backyard on multiple days, including the day before you claimed the ring was stolen, and the day you reported it missing. Lovely's mask was slipping completely now. Her face had gone pale, but her eyes were bright with anger. How dare you? How dare you accuse me of staging this? I've been the victim here, and you're trying to make me into the villain. Then explain the footage, I said calmly. Explain why you were digging in your backyard at specific times that correspond exactly with your story about when the ring went missing. I don't have to explain anything to you. You're the one who took my ring, and now you're desperately trying to create some fantasy conspiracy to avoid taking responsibility. Ronan placed the final screenshot on the table, the one showing Lovely working by flashlight Monday night. What about this, Mom? Monday night at 11:35 p.m. You're back in the garden area working by flashlight. Who came to your door that night? Who were you talking to? The question hit its mark. Lovely's face went rigid, and for the first time, she seemed genuinely shaken. That's none of your business. I'm allowed to have visitors, and work in my own yard. Mom, please, Ronan said, his voice breaking slightly. Please just tell us the truth. We have all the evidence. We know what happened. We just want to understand why. Lovely stared at him for a long moment, and I saw a flash of something that might have been regret. But when she spoke, her voice was cold and final. The truth is that you married a thief, Ronan. A manipulative, calculating thief, who has been planning to take advantage of this family for years. And now that she's been caught, she's trying to turn everyone against me with some ridiculous theory about garden cameras. She pointed at me directly. You took my ring. You waited for the perfect opportunity, when you had access to my bedroom, and you stole something that has been in my family for generations. And now you're so desperate to avoid consequences, that you're willing to destroy your husband's relationship with his mother. Mom, that's not, Ronan started, but Lovely cut him off. You have to choose, Ronan, your wife or your family, because I will not stand here and be accused of crimes by the very person who robbed me. Either she admits what she did, and returns my ring, or I'm pressing charges Monday morning, and you'll never be welcome in this house again. The ultimatum hung in the air like a physical presence. I could see Ronan's anguish, torn between the evidence he'd seen with his own eyes, and a lifetime of loyalty to his mother. Lovely, I said quietly. We know about Monday night. We know someone came to help you. This has gone beyond a simple family dispute. You've filed false police reports, made false accusations, and attempted to frame me for a crime that never happened. If you don't tell the truth now, this is going to get much worse for everyone. Lovely's eyes narrowed. Are you threatening me? I'm offering you one last chance to resolve this before it destroys our entire family. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Our family? You were never part of this family, Sophia. You were an intruder who convinced my son to betray his own mother. And now you're exactly what I always knew you were. A manipulative, lying thief. Ronan stood up slowly, his face pale but determined. Mom, I've seen the evidence. I know what really happened. If you won't admit the truth, then Sophia is right. This is going to get much worse. Then so be it, Lovely said. I'd rather lose you both than let her get away with this. We left without another word. As we drove home through the dark streets of Westfield Gardens, Ronan was silent except for occasional shakings of his head, as if he still couldn't believe what had happened. She's not going to back down, he finally said. She's committed now. She's either going to have to admit she made all this up, or she's going to follow through with pressing charges. I know, I said, which means we have to be ready for whatever comes next. Sunday passed in tense waiting. We didn't attend family dinner for the second week in a row. Amelia called twice, asking what was happening, and why everyone seemed to be avoiding each other. Ronan gave her vague answers about working things out, but we both knew the situation was far beyond family mediation. Monday morning brought the text we'd been expecting. Formal charges filed. You made your choice.
An hour later, Officer Reynolds called to inform me that Lovely Shaw had pressed formal theft charges and provided a detailed statement claiming I had stolen her grandmother's ring during our Sunday visit. A warrant would be issued for my arrest if I didn't surrender myself by Wednesday morning. Officer Reynolds, I said, I need you to know that we have evidence that contradicts Mrs. Shaw's statement, evidence that suggests the ring was never stolen at all. What kind of evidence? Security camera footage from Mrs. Shaw's own home surveillance system. Footage that shows her burying items in her backyard on multiple dates, including the day before and the day after she claims the ring was stolen. There was a long pause. Mrs. Bennett, these are serious allegations you're making. Yes, they are, and I'm prepared to present this evidence formally. But I want you to understand that this situation is not what Mrs. Shaw has represented it to be. I think you need to speak with a lawyer, Mrs. Bennett, and I think Mrs. Shaw needs to answer some additional questions about her security footage. After I hung up, Ronan and I sat at our kitchen table, surrounded by printed screenshots and backup drives containing the ring camera evidence. The peaceful suburban morning felt surreal given the magnitude of what was about to unfold. Are you ready for this? Ronan asked. I thought about everything we'd discovered, everything we'd been through, and everything that was at stake. My reputation, my marriage, my future, all hanging in the balance because of an elaborate lie designed to destroy me. I've been ready since the moment she made her first false accusation, I said. The question is whether the truth will be enough to stop her. As it turned out, the truth was more powerful than either of us had imagined. But Lovely Shaw had no idea what she'd started when she decided to wage war against someone whose expertise was finding digital evidence that people tried to hide. The confrontation had failed. Now it was time for the final showdown. Wednesday morning arrived, gray and drizzly, the kind of Pacific Northwest weather that seemed to match the gravity of what was about to unfold. I dressed in my most professional navy suit, the one I wore for high-stakes client presentations and federal court testimonies. If I was going to face formal charges, I was going to face them as the cybersecurity expert I was, not as the cowering victim Lovely expected me to be. My attorney, Harrison Cole, met me at the courthouse steps. I'd hired him Monday afternoon, on the recommendation of a colleague who specialized in white-collar defense. Harrison was in his 50s, with silver hair and the kind of calm confidence that came from decades of handling complex cases. Are you ready for this, Sophia? He asked, as we walked through the courthouse lobby. I've been ready since the moment I discovered what she was really doing, I replied, adjusting the strap of my briefcase. Inside were 3 backup drives containing the complete ring camera footage, printed timeline analysis, and a technical report I'd prepared documenting every piece of digital evidence. Remember, this is just a preliminary hearing. The goal is to present enough evidence to show that the charges are baseless and should be dismissed. Judge Martinez has a reputation for being thorough and fair, but she doesn't tolerate games or false accusations. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, with warm wood paneling and tall windows that let in the gray morning light. Lovely sat in the front row with her attorney, a stern-looking woman in her 60s, who exuded the kind of aggressive confidence that came from years of family law practice. Lovely wore a conservative black dress, and had styled her hair in a way that made her look older and more fragile than usual, the perfect image of a victimized elderly woman. Behind her sat Amelia and Xander, both looking uncomfortable and confused. Patricia Hayes was there as well, presumably to serve as a character witness. Ronan sat on my side of the courtroom, his presence a small comfort in an otherwise hostile environment. Judge Elena Martinez entered precisely at 9 a.m., her black robes rustling as she took her seat behind the bench. She was younger than I'd expected, probably in her early 40s, with sharp eyes that suggested she didn't miss much. This is a preliminary hearing, in the matter of People versus Sophia Bennett, case number 47829. Mrs. Bennett is charged with theft in the first degree, specifically the alleged theft of a diamond ring valued at $15,000 from the home of Mrs. Lovely Shaw.
Lovely's attorney, Margaret Stevens, stood to present the prosecution's case. Your Honor, this is a straightforward matter of theft from a family member. Mrs. Shaw will testify that she last saw her grandmother's diamond ring on Sunday, October 13th, when she wore it to a family dinner.
The
defendant, Mrs. Bennett, was the only non-family member who had access to Mrs. Shaw's bedroom that evening, where the ring was kept. The ring was discovered missing the following Monday morning. Stevens painted a picture of me as a calculating opportunist who had betrayed family trust for financial gain. She described my calm demeanor during the investigation as evidence of guilt rather than innocence, and she emphasized the ring's sentimental value to make the theft seem particularly cruel. When she finished, Judge Martinez turned to Harrison. "Mr. Cole, how does your client plead?" "Not guilty, Your Honor. Furthermore, we have compelling evidence that not only did Mrs. Bennett not commit this alleged theft, but that no theft occurred at all. We believe Mrs. Shaw has filed false charges based on fabricated evidence." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. I saw Lovely's face tighten, but she maintained her composed expression. "That's a serious allegation, Mr. Cole. I hope you have substantial evidence to support it." "We do, Your Honor. With the court's permission, I'd like to call Mrs. Bennett to present her findings." Judge Martinez nodded. "Mrs. Bennett, please take the stand." As I walked to the witness stand, I felt the weight of every eye in the courtroom. This was my moment to present years of cybersecurity expertise in service of my own defense. I'd analyzed corporate espionage and international fraud schemes, but I'd never had to prove my own innocence with the same tools. Harrison began with establishing my credentials. We walked through my education, my professional experience, my expertise in digital forensics and security analysis. I could see Judge Martinez taking notes, clearly understanding that my technical background was directly relevant to the evidence I was about to present. "Mrs. Bennett, did you steal Mrs. Shaw's ring?" "No, I did not." "Have you ever stolen anything from Mrs. Shaw or any member of your husband's family?"
Never.
"When Mrs. Shaw accused you of theft, how did you respond?" "I approached it the same way I would approach any security investigation. I examined the available evidence systematically, looking for patterns and inconsistencies that might reveal what actually happened." Harrison handed me a tablet loaded with the ring camera footage. "Mrs. Bennett, please tell the court what you discovered." I turned toward Judge Martinez, addressing her directly. "Your Honor, Mrs. Shaw has a comprehensive home security system that includes ring cameras covering both the front and back entrances to her property. These cameras automatically record motion-activated footage and store it in the cloud with timestamps. In essence, they create a complete digital record of everyone who approaches her house and all activity on her property." And what did this digital record reveal? It revealed a pattern of deceptive behavior that began several days before the alleged theft and continued for a week afterward. I pulled up the first piece of footage on the tablet, projecting it onto the courtroom's display screen. This is Saturday, October 12, at 2:22 p.m. You can see Mrs. Shaw exiting her back door carrying a small box and garden tools. She proceeds to the corner of her backyard and spends approximately 10 minutes digging in the flower bed. The courtroom watched in silence as Lovely's own security camera revealed her burying something in her garden. I could see confusion on the faces of Amelia and Patricia, who clearly had no idea what they were watching. This is Sunday, October 13th at 1:47 p.m., approximately 3 hours before the family dinner where I allegedly had the opportunity to steal the ring. The second video showed Lovely again in the backyard, this time spending nearly 20 minutes carefully burying what appeared to be a larger box. Judge Martinez leaned forward, studying the footage intently. "Mrs. Bennett, what is your interpretation of this evidence?" "Your Honor, Mrs. Shaw was hiding items in her backyard before the alleged theft occurred. She was creating a timeline that would make it appear the ring disappeared after our family visit, when in reality, she had already concealed it hours earlier." I continued with the Monday footage, showing Lovely's activity in the backyard on the day she claimed to discover the ring missing. The pattern was undeniable. Instead of searching her house for a missing ring, she had spent the morning digging in the exact same corner of her yard where she'd buried items the previous days. But the most significant evidence, Your Honor, is what happened Monday night. The footage showed Lovely's late-night visitor and her subsequent hour-long activity in the backyard, working by flashlight to move whatever she had buried earlier. This suggests that Mrs. Shaw had an accomplice who helped her refine her deception after she had already accused me of theft. Judge Martinez paused the video playback. "Mr. Cole, this is indeed compelling evidence. But I need to hear from Mrs. Shaw before drawing any conclusions." Harrison nodded. "Your Honor, we believe Mrs. Shaw's own testimony will further demonstrate the inconsistencies in her story." Margaret Stevens stood to cross-examine me, but I could see she was shaken by the video evidence. Mrs. Bennet, isn't it possible that Mrs. Shaw was simply doing routine garden work that happened to coincide with the theft timeline? In October, in the Pacific Northwest, there is very little routine garden work that involves burying boxes in flower beds. Moreover, the specific timing directly before and after the alleged theft suggests deliberate planning rather than coincidence. But you're asking the court to believe that an elderly woman would go to elaborate lengths to frame you for a crime. What possible motive could she have? This was the question I'd been dreading, because it required me to expose the personal dynamics that had led to this situation. Mrs. Shaw has never approved of my marriage to her son. She has made numerous comments over the years suggesting that I was not suitable for the family, that I was opportunistic, and that I was keeping her son from finding someone more appropriate. This accusation served two purposes: it would either destroy my marriage or force me to admit to a crime I didn't commit, thereby proving her assessment of my character. Stevens pressed further, but the video evidence was overwhelming. When she finished, Harrison called one more witness. Ronan. My husband took the stand looking pale but determined. Harrison walked him through his discovery of the footage, his mother's refusal to explain her actions, and the confrontation at her house. Mr. Montgomery, after seeing this evidence, do you believe your wife stole your mother's ring? No, Ronan said firmly. I believe my mother has been lying about this entire situation. And I believe she has seriously underestimated the consequences of filing false charges against my wife. Judge Martinez called for a recess to review the evidence. When court reconvened 30 minutes later, her expression was grave. Mr. Cole, Mrs. Stevens, I've reviewed the video evidence presented by Mrs. Bennet. This is one of the most disturbing cases of potential perjury and false reporting I've encountered in my 15 years on the bench. She turned toward Lovely, who had maintained her composure throughout the proceedings but now looked increasingly pale. Mrs. Shaw, the video evidence from your own security system appears to contradict your sworn statement about when and how your ring disappeared. Before I dismiss these charges against Mrs. Bennet, I'm going to give you an opportunity to explain this footage. Lovely stood slowly, her hands shaking slightly. For a moment, I thought she might finally admit the truth. But when she spoke, her voice was defiant. Your Honor, I don't know what that footage shows, but I know my ring is missing, and I know Sophia Bennet took it. These videos could be manipulated, or they could show me doing any number of legitimate activities in my own backyard. Judge Martinez's expression hardened. Mrs. Shaw, are you suggesting that Mrs. Bennet somehow fabricated footage from your own security system? I'm saying that she's a computer expert who knows how to manipulate digital evidence. And I'm saying that my ring is still missing. Then you won't object to a search of your property, particularly the backyard area shown in these videos. The question hung in the air like a challenge. Lovely's attorney whispered something urgent in her ear, but Lovely shook her head. That's my private property. You can't just dig up my garden because of some conspiracy theory. Judge Martinez's voice was ice cold. Mrs. Shaw, if you're telling the truth about this theft, then you should welcome any investigation that might recover your ring and prove Mrs. Bennet's guilt. Your reluctance suggests otherwise. She turned to the bailiff. I'm issuing a search warrant for the Shaw property, specifically the backyard area documented in the security footage. I'm also ordering an immediate investigation into potential perjury and false reporting charges against Mrs. Shaw. The courtroom erupted. Amelia gasped audibly. Patricia looked confused and horrified. Lovely's attorney was frantically trying to whisper advice to her client, but Lovely was staring straight ahead as if in shock. Furthermore, Judge Martinez continued. I'm dismissing all charges against Mrs. Bennet with prejudice. The evidence clearly shows that no theft occurred and that Mrs. Shaw has deliberately provided false information to law enforcement. As two sheriff's deputies approached Lovely to execute the search warrant, she finally broke. Wait, she said, her voice barely audible. Wait, the ring, it's in the garden. In a waterproof box, near the oak tree. The admission sent shockwaves through the courtroom. Judge Martinez leaned forward, her voice sharp with anger. Mrs. Shaw, are you now admitting that you filed false charges against Mrs. Bennet? Lovely's composure finally cracked completely. Tears streamed down her face as the weight of her deception became undeniable. I wanted her gone. I wanted my son back. She was taking him away from the family, and I thought if everyone saw what kind of person she really was. But her confession came too late. The deputies were already placing her under arrest for filing false police reports, perjury, and attempting to pervert the course of justice. As they led her from the courtroom in handcuffs, she looked back at Ronan with desperate eyes. "I did it for you," she called out. "I did it to protect our family." Ronan didn't respond. He was staring at his hands, processing the magnitude of what his mother had done and what it meant for our future. Judge Martinez addressed the courtroom one final time. "This case serves as a reminder that false accusations have real consequences, not just for the accused, but for entire families and communities. Mrs. Bennett, you are free to go with the court's apologies for what you've endured." As we left the courthouse, I felt a complex mixture of relief, vindication, and sadness. Justice had been served, but at the cost of destroying a family. The truth had prevailed, but it had revealed depths of deception and malice that would be difficult for everyone to process. The gray Seattle morning had given way to unexpected sunshine, as if the weather itself was acknowledging that the storm had finally passed. 3 hours after Lovely Shaw was led from the courtroom in handcuffs, sheriff's deputies recovered her grandmother's diamond ring from exactly where she had confessed to burying it, in a waterproof jewelry box beneath the oak tree in the corner of her backyard. The ring was undamaged, wrapped carefully in velvet cloth, along with several other pieces of jewelry that she had apparently hidden as evidence of a larger pattern of theft that she had planned to reveal if her initial accusation hadn't been sufficient to destroy me. The discovery validated everything the ring camera footage had shown, but it also revealed the true scope of Lovely's deception. She hadn't just hidden one ring to frame me for a single theft. She had been preparing a comprehensive case designed to paint me as a serial thief who had been systematically stealing from the family for years. The other jewelry pieces found in the buried box included items she had reported as misplaced over the past 18 months. Items that would have eventually been attributed to my supposed criminal behavior if her plan had succeeded. Standing in that courthouse parking lot, watching the deputies document the recovered evidence, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not just relief or vindication, but profound sadness for what had been lost. A family had been shattered. A woman I had once respected, despite our differences, had revealed herself to be capable of calculated cruelty that went far beyond simple dislike. And my husband was grappling with the devastating realization that his mother had been willing to destroy his marriage based on lies she had constructed over months of careful planning. The immediate aftermath was surreal. News of the case spread quickly through our suburban community and beyond. The story of a mother-in-law's elaborate deception, exposed by her own security cameras, captured public attention in a way that none of us had anticipated. Local news stations wanted interviews. Social media buzzed with commentary about family betrayal and the power of digital evidence. Legal blogs analyzed the case as an example of how technology could both enable deception and ultimately expose it. But I declined all media requests. This had never been about public vindication for me. It had been about clearing my name and preserving my marriage. The court had provided both, and I had no desire to extend Lovely's humiliation or turn our family tragedy into entertainment for strangers. Ronan struggled deeply with the revelation of his mother's actions. For weeks after the trial, he barely spoke about what had happened, processing the implications of discovering that someone he had loved and trusted his entire life was capable of such calculated betrayal. He attended therapy sessions, both alone and with me, working through the complex emotions of loving someone who had tried to destroy his marriage and frame his wife for crimes she had orchestrated herself. The hardest part, he told me one evening as we sat on our back porch watching the sunset, is realizing that she wasn't confused or mistaken. She knew exactly what she was doing every step of the way. She looked me in the eye and lied, repeatedly, even when she knew it was tearing our family apart. Amelia and Xander reached out to us 2 weeks after the trial, apologizing for their initial willingness to believe Lovely's accusations, and asking if we could rebuild our relationship. The conversation was awkward and painful, but it was also necessary. They had been manipulated just as thoroughly as everyone else, and while their quick acceptance of my guilt had hurt deeply, I understood that Lovely had been very convincing in her role as the victimized mother. Patricia Hayes, who had served as a character witness for Lovely, was perhaps the most devastated by the revelation. She had known her sister for 70 years, and had never suspected her capable of such elaborate deception. "I keep thinking about all the conversations we had," she told me when she called to apologize. All the times she talked about how worried she was about the family, how concerned she was about protecting everyone.
I thought she was being caring, but she was actually planning this whole thing. Lovely herself faced serious legal consequences. She was charged with filing false police reports, perjury, and attempting to pervert the course of justice. Her attorney negotiated a plea agreement that resulted in 18 months of probation, community service, and mandatory counseling, along with restitution for my legal fees and a formal apology that she read in court. The criminal conviction also meant that she would have a permanent record, something that seemed to affect her more than any other aspect of her punishment. But for me, the legal resolution was less important than the personal healing that followed. The months after the trial gave me an opportunity to reflect on what I had learned about myself, about family dynamics, and about the power of truth in the face of systematic deception. I had always believed in the reliability of digital evidence, but I had never before experienced firsthand how technology could serve as an unbiased witness when human testimony was compromised by emotion, bias, or deliberate falsehood. The Ring cameras that Lovely had used to monitor her property had ultimately become the instruments of her own exposure, providing timestamps and visual evidence that no amount of persuasive storytelling could override. More importantly, I had learned something about resilience that I hadn't fully understood before. When you're falsely accused of something serious, especially by people who are supposed to love and trust you, the temptation is to become defensive, emotional, and reactive. But my professional training in systematic analysis and evidence-based investigation had served me well in my personal crisis. By approaching the situation with the same methodical thinking I used in cybersecurity work, I had been able to uncover the truth and present it persuasively. 6 months after the trial, I decided to channel this experience into something positive. I established the Digital Truth Foundation, a nonprofit organization that provides resources and support for people who have been falsely accused of crimes or wrongdoing and need help using technology to prove their innocence. We offer pro bono digital forensics services, partner with attorneys who specialize in false accusation cases, and educate people about how to protect themselves with proper documentation and evidence preservation. The Foundation's first major case involved a teacher who had been falsely accused of inappropriate contact with students. Security camera footage from the school, combined with digital communication records, proved that the accusations were fabricated by a disgruntled parent who wanted to force the teacher's resignation. The case reminded me that false accusations are more common than most people realize, and that victims often lack the resources or expertise to defend themselves effectively. Our second case involved a small business owner who had been accused of fraud by a competitor trying to drive him out of business. Digital forensics revealed that the competitor had created fake documents and manipulated online reviews to support false claims. The evidence we uncovered not only exonerated our client, but also led to criminal charges against the actual perpetrator. Each case reinforced my belief that truth has a way of surfacing when you know how to look for it, but that many people need help accessing the tools and expertise necessary to uncover that truth. The Digital Truth Foundation has now helped over 50 individuals clear their names using digital evidence, and we've trained hundreds of attorneys and law enforcement officers in digital forensics techniques. My marriage to Ronan survived and ultimately grew stronger through the crisis. We learned to communicate more directly, to trust each other more completely, and to build a family unit that prioritized honesty and mutual support over external approval or traditional expectations. We moved to a new house in a different neighborhood, creating physical and emotional distance from the painful memories associated with our old community. Lovely and I have had no direct contact since the trial, and I don't expect that to change. Ronan visits her occasionally, maintaining a minimal relationship that acknowledges their family connection, while setting clear boundaries about what behavior he will and won't accept. She has never attempted to apologize to me personally, and I don't need her to. The court proceedings provided all the vindication I required. What I want people to understand from our story is that truth is powerful, but it often requires courage and persistence to bring it to light. When someone tries to destroy your reputation or your life with lies, your first instinct might be to fight back emotionally or defensively. But sometimes the most effective response is to approach the situation systematically, gather evidence methodically, and let facts speak louder than accusations. Technology that seems routine or innocent, security cameras, digital timestamps, communication records, can become powerful tools for justice when you know how to analyze and present the evidence they contain. But more importantly, your own expertise and skills, whatever they might be, can become instruments of truth when you apply them systematically to problems that seem overwhelming. If this story resonates with you, if you've ever been falsely accused or betrayed by someone you trusted, I want you to know that you're not alone. The path to vindication might be longer and more complex than you expect, but truth has a way of prevailing when you're persistent enough to pursue it. Leave a comment below, and tell me about a time when you had to fight for the truth in your own life. How did you find the strength to keep going when people you trusted turned against you? What advice would you give to someone facing similar challenges? Because stories like ours remind us that justice isn't always immediate or obvious, but it's worth fighting for. And sometimes the very technology that others try to use against us becomes the key to our own freedom. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell, so you don't miss any upload from us.